Welcome to my kitchen. Today we're going to talk a little bit about knives that we have in the kitchen, and then I'm going to show you how to cut up some fruits and some vegetables. Okay, so here are some of the most common types of knives that you might see in the kitchen. This one probably looks familiar to you. It's your chef's knife, and this is one I'm going to be using quite a lot today. These two are very similar. They're paring knives. Of course, a shorter blade versus a longer one. This one's a 4-inch blade, and I like to use it a lot more than the shorter blade. But these are good starter knives, so if you're not quite comfortable handling a big knife, like a chef's knife, a paring knife is a good way to go. When you pick out knives too, you should have at least one serrated edge blade in your kitchen. Great for cutting soft veggies like tomatoes or your breads and meats, things like that. You might have seen a Santoku knife before, so it has a little bit more blunt tip than the chef's knife. And then some other things that are sharp and also cut things in the kitchen that I'm going to use today: a potato peeler or vegetable peeler. And then I'm also going to show you how to use a microplane. So this I'm going to use when I zest some lemon for you later on. Okay, so when we talk about knives, some things to remember. Number one, it's best if you wash them by hand, not in the dishwasher. Things in the dishwasher get bumped around a lot, and to keep your blades nice and sharp, you want to make sure that you wash them by hand as often as you possibly can. Okay, so let's talk about sharpening knives. This is a knife sharpener, a very basic one, but it does the job. So all you have to do is take your knife, and you know when your knife needs sharpened when it starts to get hard to cut through things. Okay, you're more likely to get cut if your knife is dull, and when you look down the blade itself, you can kind of see if the blade kind of looks like it's bent on the tip. That's when you really need to sharpen it. Okay, so this particular sharpener, all you have to do is hold the knife sturdy on the counter, and then the little V-shaped part, you're just going to run it down the blade a few times, and basically what it's doing is it's just straightening out that blade again. Okay, now I'm going to clean off my countertop a little bit here because I have some shavings that we don't want to get into the food. All right, and then we're going to start cutting up a few veggies. All right. So the first vegetable that I'm going to show you how to cut up is a potato. Okay, so potatoes, in case you didn't know, they grow under the ground. This little part, you can see this guy has started to sprout. So this is a potato that we grew in our garden this year. It's been downstairs in the dark, but if you keep potatoes long enough, they start to grow. All right. So when you pick out potatoes at the grocery store, you want to make sure that they don't have this little eye. That means they've been around for a while and maybe haven't been kept in a nice, dark, cooler environment. Okay, so for today, it's not a big thing. I'm just going to snap it off. And then we're going to peel it first. Okay, so I'm going to get my junk bowl here. Use my potato peeler. And I'm just going around the potato, taking off that skin. Now this is a Yukon Gold potato. It's in the middle of the starchy range. So this is a potato you can use from various different things. If you wanted to make a nice fluffy mashed potato, you'd use something like an Idaho potato. They're the big ones that you see at the grocery store a lot of times. The more starch, the fluffier it's going to be when you make your mashed potatoes. If you wanted a red potato, they have less starch, so they're good for potato salad and things like that. Yukon Gold, right in the middle. So I'm going to rinse this guy off. Because potatoes grow underground, we want to make sure that they're clean when we go to use them. Okay? Dry my hands so that they're not slippery. And one of the things that we want to remember when we're using a knife is, one, always use a cutting board, and two, when you cut your fruit or your vegetable in half, you want to find the flat spot so that it doesn't move around on you. So that's what I'm going to do first. I'm going to cut the potato in half, and then I'm turning it so that it's on its flat side. Okay, it's not going to go anywhere when I go to cut it next. So now I'm going to cut it this way. into probably 3 sections about 1/2 inch apart. All right. So you can see I've cut it there. Now I'm going to take and I'm going to flip the potato over so that it's on a flat edge, and I'm making little cubes with these potatoes. Okay, so I'm going to cut down each one again. Do that with this side too. Flip them on their side, cut down each one, and then I'm going to go back and cut across this way to make my little cubes. All right, so you can do these one potato at a time. Notice how the potato kind of sticks to your knife. You can use that to your advantage in terms of measuring. So your little potato pieces are about the same size. When they stick to your knife, you can move over about that far to cut the next ones. Now, something too to remember, notice how my fingers are curved under. You want to keep your fingers out of the way when you're using knives in the kitchen because you don't want to lose anything. All right? So I have my little cubes. I don't know if you can see that. But these are going to make some great dill potatoes tonight for supper. So I already peeled, this is your bonus recipe. So I already peeled 4 other potatoes. So we're up to 5 potatoes. So if you're keeping track in terms of amounts, this is about 7 cups of cubed potatoes. Okay? To this, we're going to add a 1.5 teaspoons of kosher salt, a teaspoon of garlic powder, a teaspoon of dried dill, a 1/2 teaspoon of pepper, and a 1/2 teaspoon of onion powder. Okay, so we're going to stick that in there. Get my scraper here. All right, and then we need some kind of a binder. So I have 3 tablespoons of olive oil in here and 3 tablespoons of melted butter that we're going to stick in there. So there is enough fat here. You're not going to have to worry about greasing your pan for these potatoes to stick because they are not going to have a chance with all that fat. All right. So we're just going to mix these together till everything gets nice and incorporated. And if you like potatoes, this is a really, really great recipe. Even leftovers after you roast these the next day, you could put them into some scrambled eggs with some leftover steak or something like that. Makes a really tasty dish. So they're good, not just the day that you make them, but also good as leftovers. All right, so I think I have that pretty well covered. You can see the dill sticking to all the potatoes there. And what I'm going to do, I've been preheating my oven to 425 degrees. Oop, we got an escapee. And we're going to put them in our 9x13 pan, just a regular Pyrex. Make sure that you get in there and you get all the good spices and butter and olive oil out of there. All right, then I'm going to level these off in the pan. I'll stick them in the oven. It'll take 45 minutes to an hour to get them done so that they're nice and brown. I like them a little bit crisp, but every so often I'm going to go in and stir them so they don't stick. Okay, so we're just going to stick these in the oven while we work on our other fruits and veggies. Okay. All right, so next up then, let's do carrots, because carrots are kind of like potatoes. Now, for those of you who have never seen a real carrot, you've only seen those nasty little mini carrots, this is the real deal, okay? This is what they look like. There's skin on the outside. You can either scrape it off with a knife or use a peeler, and that's what I prefer to use, is a potato peeler. And so all you're going to do is run down that carrot and take the peeling off. All right? And you can do lots of things with carrots. You know, you can cook them with roast. Usually I eat them raw. That's the way that I like them. Again, veggies, notoriously dirty, so we want to give them a quick rinse. And with carrots, we want to take both ends off. All right? So now we have a clean carrot to start with. So I think I'm going to julienne this little guy. It might be kind of nice for a salad or something like that. So the first thing I'm going to do is cut him in about 3 pieces. All right, so 3 even pieces, and now I'm going to turn it and cut each one of these in half again. Okay, so we have our little flat section again. Remember, flat is good. Keeps stuff from rolling around on the cutting board. Okay, so now julienne is kind of like little bitty matchsticks. So we're going to try to cut these little carrots. Now keep your fingers curved under. The nails kind of hold the veggies in place, but you want to keep those fingers back so they don't get cut off. So I'm just going to make little bitty strips here. And then again, I'm going to turn them on their side to hit the flat spot of the carrot again. All right, so cut some little slits again, little strips, flip them on their side, and cut them into little strips again. All right, so my julienne skills are not the greatest, but they're little bitty sticks. Okay, so that was the end of the carrot. It's a little harder to do. So we're going to go to the middle part now. And I don't know if you can see or not, but once I get to the part where it's too small for me, I flip it on its side so that it's flat again. And the knife does a pretty good job of holding things where it needs to be. All right, so again, these guys, it's getting fatter up the carrot, and so it's going to take a few more cuts to get those little bitty matchstick sized pieces. So this would be good for a salad, snack, if you like hummus. Carrot sticks and hummus, pretty darn tasty. All right, so we're at the top part of the carrot, which is a little more fat now. So we're going to cut him into the same thickness that we have been. Notice I'm at the end here, so I'm going to just flip that over on the flat side. That one's sticking. I'm going to go back and cut my little pieces. So I didn't used to like using a chef's knife. I thought it was too big, it was hard to handle, but the more that I've used knives in the kitchen, the more I like it, because it has a bigger blade and I can cut bigger pieces or and veggies that are, you know, bigger too. So here we go, last one. All right, we have a good little pile going here. So you know carrots are very good for you. They have vitamin A, you need that for your night vision. Better for you than potato chips, but just as crunchy. All right, so we have our little pile of julienne carrots there. I think those will be great for later on. We'll put them in a salad or something like that. Stick them in a little bowl for right now. All right, so we've got our carrot sticks. I don't buy little baby carrots. I always use whole carrots, cut them up, and they taste a whole lot better. All right, next, let's do some celery. So in case you have not messed with celery before, this is celery. You can notice that the stalks kind of all overlap each other. So when you go to use one, just pull it off. But again, we want to make sure that we wash it. Always wash your fruits and your veggies. All right. And again, like the carrot, we're going to take each end off. Ooh, see, that's the junk drawer. We have some dirt here that we need to deal with. And I don't often like these little side things, so I'm going to throw them away. All right, so you're making a nice, let's say, relish tray to have having company over. So you want to cut up some nice sticks of celery. All right, so that top part, I just cut it in half. Now, I'm going to cut this into what I consider to be bite-sized pieces, or, you know, good for dipping. So we have about 3. And now I'm going to cut down the middle of each stalk. All right, so you can see that it's kind of U-shaped. going to cut right down the middle of that. And then I'm going to look at it and go, is that small enough that people can eat, or should I cut it in half again? I think that that's good enough. If I was going to chop this up to put in soup or something like that, at this point I'd just turn it sideways and I'd start going down the stalks, and then I'd have little pieces that I could put into my soup or whatever it is that I'm making. Okay, so we'll put that aside. Use that in our salads tonight too. All right, this one I'm just going to cut in half, and it looks like that's pretty good. That'd be good for dipping into ranch dressing or something like that, and that one too. So that's celery. Celery is very easy. Next, we're going to do some broccoli. Now, I already washed one little head here, and I'm going to show you how to wash the other one. Okay, so it's just like a cute little tree. So here's how I wash broccoli. All right, hot water in the sink, kind of scrub it around, get all the way around, and then I just put it over in my dish rack and let it sit and drain a little bit so that it's not so slippery when I go to cut it up. Now, you can do several things with broccoli. You can choose just to use the heads, which is what we do, or you can also use the stalk part, and you can peel that and use it if you make broccoli soup or something like that. But you can see we have all of these little pieces on the head. And so the easiest way that I've found to cut up broccoli is just to hold on to it and move around and cut off little bite-sized pieces. Now sometimes they're going to be a little bit bigger, and I'll go back and I'll take care of those later. But this is the fastest way that I found to take care of broccoli. Okay. Good chunk. Now, see, we've got a whole bunch here that are kind of stuck together. So I'm going to take my paring knife and cut those off. And yes, I know I'm cutting toward myself. Shouldn't do that. But sometimes, depending on what it is you're doing, that's what has to be done. All right. So if there's any bad spots too, your paring knife, get in there. Or if it's still too big, you can cut it in half that way. Here's a bad spot. Cut that off, put that in the trash bowl. All right, so that's how to do broccoli. Okay, so pretty easy. We've got a good amount of veggies here. We're ready for our week. Okay, onions. Now these guys are very tricky. They're notoriously tricky. They've got their peel on the outside. Do you peel it before you cut it? Do you cut it and then peel it? I cut it and then peel it. So here's what I do. Again, this is a root vegetable. So this grows underground, just like potatoes. This is the root end, and this is the end that has the greens that come out. I'm going to chop off both ends before I do anything else. And you can see when I chop it, it starts to take some of the peeling off. All right, so we'll just pitch that in there. Now I'm going to cut it in half. And you can see that it's much easier for that peeling to come off. All right, so nice pretty purple onion. All right, now with onions, you can cut them up multiple different ways. If I was going to make onion rings, for instance, I wouldn't have cut the onion in half. I would have just sliced it, and then that would have left the rings intact. I don't usually do that for recipes. Usually I'm cutting it into a dice, or for stir fry, you'd run your knife around the onion this way. So for instance, it's going to make little kind of like half moon shapes if you wanted to cut it like that, and that's good for stir fry. But usually I'm going to cut it up to use either in a salad, red onion in a salad, or something like that. So to cut into small little dices, you're going to hold your hand on the top. Now you have to be really careful when you do this so that the knife is flat and it doesn't go into the bottom of your hand. All right, but you're going to make little slits toward the root, not going all the way through. I'm stopping about 3/4 of the way. All right, so I have my little slits. I don't know if you can see those little divisions there. Now I'm going to start on the outside of the onion, and I'm going to make, or try to make, about even cuts that way too, across the top. All right, so now I've gone this way, and I've gone this way, and now I'm going to chop straight down, and that's going to give me my little dice for whatever it is that I'm making. All right, so you can see we have a lot of little bitty pieces now that are even, and so when you cut up things, especially if it's going to be cooked, you want to make sure that they're cut evenly so that everything cooks or bakes evenly. Okay, so that's onion. Stick that over here out of the way. Use that for something else later on. All right, so I'm making quite a little mess here. That's a really strong onion. All right, so veggies, I think that they take more time to cut up than fruit, but they're very, very good for you. So you really need to know how to cut them up so that when it comes time for you to make something, you're going to be good to go. I'm going to clean this up real quick, and then we'll get to apples, and I'm going to show you how to zest a lemon and also how to cut up a pineapple. So I'll be right back. Okay, so we're now set up to cut up some fruit. So let's do pineapple first. Our little happy chameleon here. All right, so a pineapple, when you pick one out at the grocery store, there's a couple of things that you can do. I'm a sniffer, so I'll sniff it and see if it smells like pineapple. Yes, I am that person at the grocery store. Another thing that you can do is, ooh, something bit me, is pull out a leaf. And if the leaf comes out easily, then you know that your pineapple is good to go. All right, so let's chop this puppy up. First thing that we're gonna do, we're gonna chop off both ends. So once again, we need a level surface to cut from. So we're gonna whack his little head off here. All right, into the trash. So they kind of leave behind these little leafy things sometimes. That's not too tasty. Now, as I'm going through this, if I see a bad spot, I'm going to cut that out too. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going around the outside of the pineapple. The first cut is just kind of to see where I'm at, okay? So we're going to go around, turn it so maybe you can see. All right. So those little eye things, we'll come back and we'll get those later. All right. So I'm trying to line up the knife so I don't take too much of the fruit, but I get all of the skin. So if you don't go quite deep enough, it leaves behind these little hard things, and they have to come out because they're kind of chewy if you haven't had fresh pineapple before. Okay, now, a pineapple has a core straight down the middle. I don't know if you can zoom in and you can see that or not, but that part right there is really, really hard and fibrous. So we need to make sure that we cut that out. So that's how we're going to do the next, or that's what we're doing next, okay? So I'm going to take and cut straight down the center. All right. So maybe you can see a little bit better than if we got a bad spot. Let's just take the whole bottom off. With a pineapple's one of those things you just don't ever know what you're going to get until you cut into it. All right, so can you see that core straight down the middle? So we're going to cut again straight down, so we're quartering our pineapple. Okay. Now the next thing that I do is I kind of check to see where the core is at the top, and then I run my knife down the fruit. And that's how I take out the core. And I'm going to do that on each one of these 4 pieces. All right, and it pretty much, if your knife is sharp enough, it's going to run pretty much down that core and gets it out for you. All right. So the next thing that I'd like to do is chop it up into little pieces to have like for a fruit salad or something like that. So flat part, that part of the core that I just took out is nice and flat. So now I'm going to make long little incisions, and then we're going to turn it and chop it this way. So you have little bite-sized pieces. Kind of like if you got a can of chunked pineapple, for instance. That's basically what we're doing, except this tastes a whole lot better than out of the can, okay? So again, I have it on that flat section, turning it and cutting it into bite-sized pieces. And if you see a little piece of the woody part, just chop it out, right? Okay. So pineapple is acidic, so if I wanted to make a fruit salad that had something like apples that turn brown, pineapple would work great in there. It helped to keep that browning from happening. That's called enzymatic browning. All right. So that was pretty fast work, my pineapple. All right, now pineapples leave behind, they kind of have a little bit of a slimy kind of texture. So I'm going to wipe off my board before I get started on the apples themselves. All right, run that down my knife. We want to limit our cross-contamination. Okay, so let's chop up an apple. I'm going to show you a couple of ways to do an apple. One way is simply cutting it in half, and we're going to use the chef's knife. The other way I'm going to show you is quartering an apple, okay, because both have a purpose. So let's talk about, it's a nice sized apple. Let's cut it in half first, all right? So you want to pick the most stable part. This seems to be the best, the flattest part. I'm going to hold on to it with both hands, or one hand on either side, and cut straight down the core. All right, so the apple's in half. Okay, this next step, I'm going to need to use my paring knife for this. All right, so I'm going to cut a little half moon here on either end of the apple, cutting out the core. You can always, if you want to, kind of cut in and make a V-shaped cut at either end. And then, now when you do this part, you need to be careful that you don't go all the way through the apple because your hand's right there, okay? So I'm basically scooping out, you can see I'm wiggling the apple a little bit, but I'm scooping out that core, okay? So we'll do it again on this end. So kind of a V-shaped cut on either end to cut out whatever core might be there. And then holding onto the blade with these two hands, fingers, we're going to cut out the core. Okay, so if you wanted peanut butter and apples, this is a great way to do it. Okay, so this is a halved apple. Well, let's quarter one. Quartering, you can use your paring knife or you can use a chef's knife. I think the chef's knife is faster, so I'll show you how to do that. And what I didn't mention, I did already wash these apples. So cut them in half, find the flat spot. Now I'm going to cut each one in half again because that's a quarter, right? Now, if you have it on its side, you can see right where the core is, right here, and each end. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take my knife, I'll turn sideways here so maybe you can see, I'm going to angle my knife back so that it takes out that core, all right? Core is gone, it's stuck to my knife. I'm going to put it over here in the trash bowl and we'll do it again. Now, you have to be careful with where your knife is and where your fingers are, but this can be a lot faster method. Let's say I wanted to slice apples up to have with caramel dip or something like that. Notice we have a flat spot again here, so I can slice my apple into pieces, sticking to my knife. And then you have apples to dip, apple slices, all right? So I think this is faster than getting out my little 8-sided Pampered Chef divider. And we have one more, all right? So at an angle, I'm cutting down. Looks like we have a bad spot in this one. Paring knife. And then we'll slice it. Okay, so if you wanted to, this would be great, you know, in an apple pie even. Might want a little thinner slices, but there we have our pineapple and our apples. All right, our last fruit that I'm going to show you, we're going to use the zester or microplane to zest a lemon. And basically when you zest, the purpose of doing that is just to get little bitty shreds of the outside of the citrus fruit. It has a lot of natural oils in it, and it's a really potent flavor of that particular fruit. So lemon bars require that you zest the outside of a lemon, and they're really, really tasty. Okay, so a microplane, basically this is a bunch of little bitty blades on here that are going to cut off the outside of the lemon, all right? So I'm just going to run it down the plane, and notice that I'm turning it as I go, all right? So I'll show you here in just a second these little bitty pieces. Okay. So I don't know if you can see on the plate or on the back of the microplane, these are little bitty pieces, really thin shavings of the outside of the fruit. And it smells really, really good. But I stopped before I got to the white part. If I kept going, let's pick a section, and I just kept going to town, I'm gonna get into the pith. And that part is bitter. We don't want to have that in our food. So when you're using a microplane or a zester, you move around the outside of the fruit and keep moving it so that you don't get any of that white part. All right? So that concludes cutting up fruits and veggies today, and a little bit about knives. Just make sure that you're keeping your fingers out of the way when you're using a knife. You're keeping them nice and sharp, and you'll be able to cut up all kinds of fruits and veggies to your heart's delight. Thanks.